All right, let's talk about something that's in pretty much every kitchen on every dining table: salt. For what feels like forever, we've been told to cut way, way back on it for our health. But what if that whole story is missing the point? We're going to dig in and see if salt is really the villain or if it's just been framed.
It's one of those health facts we all just kind of accept, right? Salt equals high blood pressure. End of story. But when you actually look at the science, the case against salt starts to look surprisingly weak. So we have to ask the big question: is salt really the enemy we've been told it is?
So, on one hand, you've got the common story: eat less salt, and your blood pressure will magically go down. Simple. But the hidden truth, the thing we're about to unpack, is that it is so much more complicated. Turns out, salt might not be the cause at all, but just a victim of a much, much bigger problem happening inside our bodies.
Okay, so first things first, how did salt even get this bad rap? Let's go back and look at the evidence, examine the case file against our favorite seasoning. This whole anti-salt idea didn't just pop up out of thin air. A lot of it came from huge, influential studies like the DASH diet. And look, the results were pretty clear. People on the diet saw their blood pressure drop. So, case closed, right? Well, not so fast. And here is the giant flaw in the argument. The DASH diet wasn't just a low-salt diet. The participants were also told to cut out a ton of sugar and refined carbs. And that just blows the whole thing wide open, doesn't it? What was actually moving the needle? Was it less salt or was it less sugar?
This quote just nails it. Because they cut sugar and salt at the same time, salt got blamed for a crime it didn't commit. It was there at the scene of the crime, but it wasn't the perpetrator. It was, just like the source says, an innocent bystander. Okay, so if we're letting salt off the hook, if it's the innocent bystander, then who's the real culprit behind high blood pressure? It's time to pull off the mask. Everybody, meet the real villain of our story: insulin resistance. This is a big one. It's a condition where your body's cells, especially in your muscles, just start ignoring the signals from insulin. Think of it like they're plugging their ears. And this is a huge driver of so many chronic diseases. So how does this work? Well, insulin does a lot of things, but one of its jobs is to tell your kidneys to hold on to salt. Now, if you're insulin resistant, your insulin levels are high pretty much all the time. That means your kidneys are getting a constant screaming signal to retain salt, which makes you retain water. At the same time, high insulin can cause your blood vessels to constrict, to tighten up. So you've got more fluid in a smaller pipe. And, you guessed it, higher blood pressure. And here is the craziest, most ironic part of this whole thing. When you follow that old advice and slash your salt intake, your body kind of freaks out. It thinks, whoa, we're not getting enough salt. Red alert. So, to protect itself, it cranks up your insulin levels to force your kidneys to hang on to every last grain of sodium. But what does that do? It makes the underlying insulin resistance even worse. It's a vicious cycle where the thing you're doing to fix the problem is actually making the root cause worse. Okay, so that's the problem. But the good news is, there's a really clear, straightforward way to fight back against insulin resistance. And it's all built on what our source here calls the 4 pillars of health. The whole game plan here is to manage what you eat to keep your insulin nice and low. And it boils down to these 4 incredibly powerful pillars. Number 1, and this is the big one, control your carbohydrates. Number 2, prioritize protein. Number 3, don't fear fat. And finally, number 4, once you're comfortable with the first 3, think about adding in some fasting. So pillar 1 is absolutely key. It's all about where your carbs are coming from. You want to get them from whole foods, fruits and veggies that you actually eat. You don't drink them as juice. And you want to be really suspicious of any carbs that come in bags, boxes, or have barcodes. You know, the chips, crackers, bread, and cereal that are designed to spike your insulin through the roof. Now, as you cut back on all those processed carbs, you've got to replace those calories with something. And that's where pillars 2 and 3 come into play. Loading up on protein and healthy fats is critical, mainly because they barely move the needle on your insulin levels. Plus, this combo keeps you feeling full and satisfied, and it's fantastic for building muscle. Now, speaking of muscle, let's talk about the secret weapon you have in this fight. It's something we don't think about nearly enough when it comes to metabolic health: your own muscles. This might actually shock you. When researchers look at what best predicts a long and healthy life, you'd think it would be cardio, right? But aerobic fitness is actually a pretty weak predictor. You know what's a much, much stronger predictor? Your total muscle mass and your overall strength.
So why is muscle so critical? Well, think of your muscles as your body's glucose sponge. After you eat a meal with carbs, that glucose has to go somewhere. And your muscles are the primary storage tank. The more muscle you have, the bigger your sponge, and the more sugar you can just soak up right out of your bloodstream without needing a massive insulin spike.
And this is where exercise is a literal magic. When a muscle is actually working, when it's contracting, it can pull glucose directly out of your blood without even waiting for insulin to give it permission. It's like having a VIP pass. This is why exercise is so incredibly powerful for improving insulin sensitivity. It gives you a way to manage blood sugar that's totally separate from the hormone itself.
Okay, so when you put all of these pieces together, it really forces you to step back and take a hard look at what we, as a planet, are actually eating every day.
Get a load of this number. 70%. That's how many of the calories we humans eat around the world come from carbohydrates. That's the one macronutrient that has the biggest, most direct impact on our insulin levels. Now, hold that 70% number in your head and listen to this. This is a quote from a U.S. government report on nutrition. It says, "The lower limit of carbohydrate consumption in humans is 0." Think about what that means. We have essential fats and essential proteins, nutrients our bodies have to get from food. But there's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. Our bodies can make all the glucose we need. And that really just leaves us with one final, pretty mind-blowing question, doesn't it? Our entire modern diet is built around the one macronutrient we don't technically need to eat, while we blame an innocent bystander like salt for our problems. So what would happen if we started focusing on what our bodies actually need, instead of just what we're used to eating?